Hello, my little chickadees. It's Ja Boy, everyone's favorite asshole with contact dermatitis. Ugh. The yellow Sheldon. Highly relevant. I'm also a master of none. Jack of fucking everything. You could say I guess I'm pretty good at the bike stuff. I mean, as good at it as anyone is at anything, really. However, look at this. Gloves in a bottle. We'll see if it helps with my hideous, disfiguring skin disease. How do I start this? I had seen these shifters before. Everybody knows Modolo. They're one of my favorite brake manufacturing companies from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond, because of their willingness to sort of test the water with really bizarre designs. These are not from the same time period, but what you see is it's a Kronos brake, which, you know, this is during the era when you had sort of the campy, oh my god, the campy like linkage brakes, and Shimano was also doing something with its Dura Ace line, all, you know, ostensibly to make them more aerodynamic. They were hiding all the doodads and slimming the wind-facing footprint of the brake. I thought it was a nice prop because it looks somewhat like a Cronenbergian sex toy. Tonight's knife is the classic Knife Fundamentals, get your shit together and get one, CQC7 from Emerson. They're interesting because they are everything I hate in a pocket knife. Tonto, chisel grind, thumb disc, liner lock. And yet, God bless Ernest Emerson, no matter how much I dislike each of these individual components, the CQC7 is a must carry. I really like this. It's all homemade looking, you know. If you've ever had like a nice Spyderco, a lot of the production Emersons I've had are just a little rough, a little simple, but you can always count on them. They have a certain, I don't know, operator swagger to them, and yeah, sharp as shit, cuts forever. So, back to these guys. So I had seen this stuff. I had just never really taken the time to research. You know, lots of companies have had strange attempts at usurping Shimano and Campagnolo in the integrated shifter brake lever market. And until SRAM came along, really nobody was making any headway into that. Modolo, so as near as I can tell, these were first introduced in 1998. To my insane, crazy surprise, they're still selling them today. You can go, and it's kind of a shame actually, it becomes a lot less rare and cool if you can still buy them today, but whatever. They've made slight tweaks and apparently they work better. So maybe Master of None is no longer applicable, but I'm guessing, I'm guessing it's still applicable. These are very strange. I thought they were probably just, I don't know, built by Sachs Cetus, which was a company that was later absorbed by SRAM. They also made grip shift stuff. It has that feel to it. It has this look, the font, you know, everything about this screams Sachs to me, S-A-C-H-S. Very strange layout. You have, geez, it's hard to do not on a handlebar. You have this, which I'm guessing is adding cable tension. And you have this one, which appears to be a release. I guess, let's see, if I was in a drop, yeah, I could still shift if I was in a drop bar position. You know, they kind of remind me of the unergonomic position for little hands like mine of the Kelly Takeoff cyclocross brake, shifter adapters. They sort of mount, they're like a Paul Thummy, like a Paul Thumb shifter, but they are a little tube that mounts here, and your down tube shifters end up right where these buttons are, actually. So, looking for a topic to do a video on tonight, I picked these up and played with them for a second and realized, wait a minute, there are things going on here that I don't really understand, so I decided to Google it. The Morphos shifters are meant to be pretty much anything compatible. You are able, according to Modolo, although internet reviews would have me believe that they suck at doing everything. They do everything equally poorly. You're able to crack them open, and inside of here is a little toggle, which I don't know if I can actually turn. Nope, can't turn it. Anywho, depending on what position the flats, the tool interface are in, you can get Shimano 9-speed, Shimano 8-speed, Shimano 7-speed, and therefore Shimano 6-speed, if you read a little bit into it. And you can have 10-speed, Campy, and Shimano, and Campy 9-speed. So, oh, and I should say that the left shifter is capable of doing doubles and triples. So you can set the dial to have either 2 chain rings or 3. Now, this is a really cool idea. It's one of those ideas that is so damn good that they must just be awful, because so here's a great example. So for cyclocross, lots and lots of people that I know really like mixing and matching their drive sets, right? Their gruppos. Same with people who ride recumbents, same with people who have tandems. There are a lot of people who really appreciate the robustness and the reliability, rebuildability of Campagnolo shifters, but they want the extended gear range, the cheapness, because they're always trashing the derailleurs, and, you know, I guess durability of like Shimano mountain stuff. And so for a long time, there's just been these sort of hacks. You know, you saw in my adapters episode that there are JTech shift mates of every stripe and color that allow you to use kind of whatever shifter you want with whatever derailleur. And those work okay. When set up properly by a real mechanic, or at least an adequately informed home mechanic, they work pretty damn good. You know, bravo JTech. But, so I'll give you a scenario in which you might want to use Campy shifters and Shimano derailleurs, or Campy and SRAM or whatever. Let's say cyclocross racing, if you're not familiar with it, it's sort of road racing, only it's fucking in mud. And you're hopping over hay bales and barriers, and you're covered in shit, and it's freezing cold, and you're usually like wearing gloves and carrying your bike half the time on your shoulder. So the fact that Campy has a blade to shift up and a thumb button to shift down, if you're wearing very heavy, warm gloves, Shimano's system, which has 2 buttons here, it can get confusing and you can miss-shift. And if you're racing, that can actually be really detrimental. So I've seen racers who really appreciate the discrete button positioning, one here, of Campy shifters. Still, they want big-ass, crazy gears. They're probably running a 1x, so 1 chainring in the front. And they want, if they torch their derailleur by missing a barrier or like, you know, a dismount, crashing, whatever. A lot of crazy stuff happens in cyclocross. They want to not pay $300 for a derailleur, and they want it to be able to shift to a 28 or a 30 or a 32. So, you know, there's alternate cable clamping methods. There's the JTech shift mate. There's certain combinations where, like, you know, if you use like 10-speed Campy on like a 9-speed Shimano derailleur with like blah 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 blah. There's like, if you Google it, there's charts online of things that sort of work. In my experience, just about all of them that people say will work a certain way, they will. The caveat is this: they don't work for very long. So there's this sort of index creep is kind of what I would refer to it as. When you're hacking a system, when you're making something that's not supposed to talk to something else, expect to fiddle with it a lot. You know, I've had sort of Shimano setups before, and it's like I don't even notice that they suck because I'm a mechanic. So, you know, every month or every week or whenever it pops up, I'll just twist the barrel adjuster a little bit and just adjust that fine tune just a tiny bit so it's still indexing properly. As a side note, a lot of these problems seem to have disappeared for 11-speed. So, you know, let's say you have a rear end that's either 130, and by rear end I mean the space between your dropouts in the back of your frame. It's either 130 millimeters or 135, or if there's mountain bikes, there's all kinds of crazy things now, and, you know, there's through axles. But let's say ostensibly, the majority of bicycles in the world right now are going to have either a 130 or 135. Well, the more cogs you stack into this space, because remember, you're limited. Your wheel will become incredibly weak if you go past this plane. If you ever look at a wheel from the back, there's this thing called dish, and there's also spoke offset. So on a multi-speed wheel with a gear cluster, whether that's a free wheel or a cassette, you end up having the spokes on the non-drive side, they're coming out at a more extreme angle than the spokes on the drive side. So you are limited in this direction. You can't like take the spokes and have them bow inwards like this, because what happens? Your wheel will just collapse into itself. So it has to somewhat be a triangle still. You know, it can be very slight. You look at some really crazy wheels with lots of offset, and you know, it almost looks like the spokes on the drive side are going straight to the rim. But if you breach that horizon, your wheel is no longer strong. In fact, it's greatly weakened just by having asymmetrical, spoke angles, basically. There's ways around that as well. However, the confluence, or convergence, I should say, of 11-speed is kind of beautiful. So, SRAM, Campy, Shimano, 11-speed stuff can be made with very little fiddling to sort of shift each other. You know, the cable pull ratio for the shifters is different, so you can't really fuck with that. However, one thing that occurs is that, like, if you were at a race and neutral support handed you a wheel and it was like a Shimano 11-speed wheel and you were running Campy or SRAM, more or less you can just slot that shit in there and start riding. I don't think it's the best solution for long-term use, but, you know, again, it's way less fiddly than other hack jobs I've seen. So, yeah, in stacking more cogs into that space, they've essentially run out of space to go left or right or up or down, and they've become all the same, more or less. So, you can see that there is a need, or at least a desire, for mix and match shift systems. Let's just take a quick look at all this stuff here. Oh, cool! They've given you a little chart. These particular ones must be a generation older, because I'm seeing 8, 9, and 7. And also unlisted would be 6. Another strange thing about these, the brake cable, so normal, quote-unquote normal road brakes, the cable goes into a little carrier right here. Obviously, they can't do that because they've got this huge whose derailleurs are you shifting selector here. So, they've moved it to the bottom here. Let's look at the things. Pretty standard fare there. I like that the band is aluminum. It's probably contributing to its lightweight feel. And how are we bolting to the bar? Peel the hood off a little bit. There. So, kind of a hybrid between Campy and Shimano. This sort of hidden 5mm bolt, which will draw this band tightly into the body, causing it to tighten down on the bar. Ooh, that is a long... Check this out. Look how long the throw is on this. Wow, even releasing cable, the throw is enormous. They're very stiff, and not in a pleasant way. I think that the styling on these is just amazing. Maybe they're only like $150 online. I might just chance it and build up some ghetto commuter bike with these just to see how they function in real life and report back to you. Yeah, Modolo. You know, this is the price you pay. Shittiness, I should say, is the price you pay for being willing to experiment. Time and time again, you see with companies that are willing to experiment with new materials, experiment with new designs. That's pretty risky, you know? And everyone has their huge flops. I actually really respect companies that are willing to sort of go out on a limb. You know, some engineer sitting somewhere, some designer who goes, well, you know, why don't we make it eccentric? Why don't we make where the cable either pulls from or rotates from or bolts to eccentric so that we can just click through several settings? Wouldn't that be cool? And to actually take it to fruition, yeah, it sucks, I guess, but, you know, kudos to you for actually fucking doing it. Because what you have is this sort of balkanization. You know, you're either a Campy guy or a Shimano guy, and God fucking help you if you're a SRAM person. I don't know what to do for you. But, yeah, the ability for a third party to come in and offer something that basically bridges the gap, especially because there's a lot of vintage stuff that you can't get for a reasonable price. I can see these filling a role with, let's say you had a classic road bike, some Mondonico or something, and, you know, these are still Italian, they're still nice, they have sort of that classic styling. Let's say your very, very last 8-speed ergo power shifter finally blew up, and you just can't find parts for it, or it's prohibitively expensive. Well, I could see these, if they functioned acceptably, being a reasonable option for that user. I can see someone using these. I mean, there are sort of a lot of, like, things that will never happen, but it's an interesting idea. The one that springs to mind initially is Surly for a while had this thing called not right spacing. I think it had a G in it somewhere, like GNOT, not right spacing. And so they're cross frames or whatever, rather than being 130 millimeters for road wheels or 135 for mountain bike or like cyclocross wheels, they were from the fucking factory spaced at 132.5. So the idea was that you would, you know, if you had a road wheel, you would just sort of compress the frame using the quick release down to 130. If you had a cyclocross or mountain bike wheel, you would just slightly spread the frame, like 2.5 millimeters or whatever, until it was 135. An interesting idea, but I mean, like, how often are we changing the size of our rear wheel? And also, can we not just stuff it in if it's the wrong wheel and it's temporary anyway? I mean, we're already sort of deflecting the outside of the frame, and we're going from, you know, 1.25 millimeters on each side with the not right spacing to 2.5 millimeters on either side if we're just jamming a 135 into a 130 frame. You know, I don't see the big deal. But when I saw that, I was like, that's so cool. How adaptable. How awesome. It's kind of like the ability to run multiple wheel sizes. I mean, maybe that's really neat, but at the end of the day, a lot of these superfluous, you know, adaptations don't get used. You know, a user will buy the bike, figure out how they want to set the bike up, and then they'll set it up like that, and they'll just leave it like that for the entire life of the bike. So, you know, ostensibly, I say ostensibly too much, but I could see the appeal of these if you trashed your rear wheels a lot and you never quite knew what you were going to get. You were like, oh crap, now it's an 8-speed Shimano, and then you trashed it again, and you're like, oh, all I have left is a 6-speed Campy free hub. Well, I mean, these would serve you. You could just turn the selector switch and use your new wheel. Obviously, there's going to be chain compatibility issues, right? So the 6-speed chain is going to be too wide for everything else, and at the extreme end, maybe the 10 or 11-speed chain would be too narrow for the 7, 6, and 5-speed stuff. But yeah, I thought these were neat, and I really underestimated them. You know, I didn't have any clue that these were a multi-system, multi-speed index selectable shifter. Quick note, let's just take a quick look at the Chronos. I've never taken one of these apart, so your guess is as good as mine. We have spring. This is like a receiver for the cable housing, barrel adjuster. I have a rubber boot. Oh, we could peer inside. Oh, wow. So, most barrel adjusters, the spring is so that it holds adjustment. It's under tension, right? So if you dial it in or out a little bit, the spring pressing on it will put enough friction in the threads that it won't lose its adjustment. This spring is serving that function, but it is also the mainspring for the brake. So this brake has no spring tension at this point. Let's see if we can look at how it be. So I am seeing that central yoke, which is pulling up and down. I guess this arm is attached behind this one. And yeah, it's quite simple. It's just a linkage. It's like every other linkage brake. It's just a... Oh my god, it's cracked. Do you see that crack there? Hiding, waiting for the day to kill some old collector under its rubber boot. Look at that. The whole faceplate is cracked. Wow. So yeah, this is a lot like, sort of like rods and pistons in cars. Only it just goes up and down. That travel is being conveyed to these linkages, which are pushing up this member, which is tethered to this pivot, which is causing the brake to compress when you pull on this central nubbin here. Well, I'm glad that this is dead and in the museum. It's not like these ever really stopped you anyway. I should say that. You know, we joke a lot about how these weren't really brakes. They weren't designed to stop you. They were what you call speed modulators. You know, brakes, comma, they just slow you down. So that's an interesting assortment of modolo crap. Yeah, if you ever have tried these, if you've gotten the modern ones that claim to do pretty much everything, I'd love to hear in the comments what they're like actually on a bike. They're nicely made. They feel like care was put into and attention was given to producing them. I don't know if the new ones are sort of like made in China and feel like crap or whatever, but they look exactly the same as these. So I bet they're all right. Yeah, comment, subscribe, fucking share my videos. I was like, I joined Reddit so that I could like up my videos or whatever. Because not like I don't use Reddit, I'm just a lurker. And then I realized that I don't really have a game plan for sharing videos on Reddit, because I hate spammers, and I don't want to be this piece of shit who like every 2 days uploads a just diarrhea of like my media onto Reddit. But every instinct I have about sort of social media and growing a channel and getting more eyes on shit seems to be wrong. Maybe it's because I have some degree of self-respect and humility. Not a ton, mind you, just a teeny little bit. But yeah, share this shit. And, you know, if I've ever gotten any details about any of this stuff wrong, I would love to hear from you. I get sort of snowblind between my memories, half of which are just like obliterated, snow, TV snow, just in the back of my head, and then the internet, which, when I was super into this stuff, a lot of the information I wanted was sort of on like alt.rec.bicycle or whatever, and it's really, really hard to trudge through those threads and find that stuff now. I think I'm pretty good on most of this stuff, but if you know better, or even if you think you do, leave a comment. Jack of all trades, master of one. John Shabadoo signing out.